welcome to round 6 of the Zwift Z Pro Tri Series. We got some great racing on tap for y'all this morning. I am Matt Lieto, and with me, luckily for me and you, is Sean Jefferson. How's it going, Sean?
Hey, Matt. Great to be here again. And today we're at the KOM after party race, one of my favorites on Zwift. And looking forward to getting underway with these, see what these women can do today.
No, it's a pretty brutal course. It's one that looks a little bit easier on paper, and we can tell we're joining the ladies as they've kind of already been racing for 20 minutes. This course takes a little bit longer, so we had them start before our normal broadcast time, and it's already broken up a fair bit, Sean, as they go into this leg snapper hill. Tell us why this course is so tough.
Yeah, on paper, this course looks relatively easy. It's 30K, relatively flat, but like we just saw, this there's a 450-meter hill at 8% right in the middle of this flat loop that really breaks up the course, and we've seen already 5 to 6 women get dropped, and we'll jump back in to see how many just made it over the second time up the leg snapper.
And that hill is it's definitely not one for the stereotypical like time trialist or what you'd think triathletes are good at, just because it's so short and so sharp. Luckily, there is a finish climb today that's going to be a little bit more suited to those athletes, but this is what's ripping this race apart as we see Watkinson on the front of this group as they go over and go into this descent.
Yeah, every time you go up that hill, it's just short enough and steep enough that you really have to do like a max effort just to get over the top. And then if you miss the train on the descent, you're just kind of on your own for the rest of the loop. So really important to get over the top of that and then get on the pack, get on the back, and draft through the bottom of this course.
So obviously this this field is already blown apart a little bit going over that tough climb, but let's look at the riders to pay attention to today, and we'll see how good we did at picking those riders to watch, whether or not they're still in this group or not. But we do have some great athletes here this morning. Sophie Caldwell, she's one that has won here. Antonia Reznikov was here last week, had a great race, won there. Excuse me, as well as Skye Monch and Meredith Kessler. But Sean, these are the athletes that we kind of expect to fire things up in the race today. But who do you think is going to win?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Melanie Moore this week. She's been consistent throughout this series, and I think this race today is going to suit her pretty well.
Battle with you a little bit on whether or not that's truly going out on a limb, but she's definitely
a strong limb.
Definitely
strong
showing.
limb.
Yeah, it's a strong, well cured branch. Jackie Herring taking a pull here. She's one that I would pick. Except she did do a race at Crit City yesterday that I know was a really, really challenging race. So I think she's maybe a little bit too fatigued. I think a kind of newcomer to the Z Pro Tri Series, my pick is going to be Amelia Watkinson. We saw her at 70.3 Worlds really push it up that climb. And I think maybe it's not a coincidence that we saw her join us here today, where they're going to have a really big finish climb at the end of this Innsbruck KOM after party.
Yeah,
but Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, the race it looks like it's already down to 9, and we got a solid group up front. 2 women, Skye Monch and Meredith Kessler, kind of got dropped a little bit on that last little leg snapper climb. But I also like seeing Natalie Van Heerden in there. She's one of the Zwift Academy riders, and she's pretty good on climbs as well. So I like to see her get to the base of the climb with this group and see them battle it out.
Looking now that you pointed that out, that Skye Monch and Meredith Kessler got dropped off at the leg snapper climb. Right now, it looks like Skye is 15 seconds. She is with Meredith Kessler. It's 2 women against a group of 9. I think I know the answer, but even on this flat section of course, is there any way for those 2 women to get back to this field before they hit the main climb at the end of the race today?
Likely it's not going to happen. It'd take a pretty concerted effort from both of them working really, really well together to make up this gap, 15, 16 seconds, now 17. So, I mean, I think at this point, they've just got to conserve as much, try to keep that time as minimal as possible, and hopefully they can have a big climb at the end of the day and catch some of these riders that may have overexerted themselves early on.
One of the first races that we've covered here where if you let the group, air quotes, let the group go, there's a sustained enough effort at the end that you might be able to bring yourself back. And that's very, very different than we had last week, Sean, where we raced on Crit City. Let's talk a little bit about how that race panned out.
Yeah, Crit Cities always will keep riders together for the most part. It's a little bit harder to get dropped there, so you'll see a bigger pack and more of a sprint finish today. With it being whenever you see a course on Zwift with KOM after party in it, it means you're finishing at the top of a hill. So today we've got the KOM in Innsbruck. It's a 4.6 mile climb to finish the race, and it's an average grade of 6%. So we'll see a lot of, 15 to 20 minute time climb at the end that riders can pull time back, but you don't want to start it 3 minutes down. So right. It's going to be tough for them to catch back on. Yeah,
you might get a straggler or two that completely detonates, but you're not going to move into kind of the meat of the leaderboard at that point. But here we go on screen. We have Kelsey Withrow, Jackie Herring swapping poles as they get close to the base of Leg Snapper Hill. Lenny Ramsey, she's one that seems to have been doing a bunch of work here early today, as well as Maureen Moore on screen right there. That looks like Sky Munch. So there we go. There's Sky pushing away in that chase. She's a solo chaser now. Meredith Kessler is nowhere to be found. So just Sky doing her best to try to get up to that group. Keep going, Sky. She's giving it, making sure she stays hydrated and doing all the things she needs to do. Because in the end, Sky's here to make sure she gets a great workout. So she's having a good time. She got dropped on Leg Snapper, but she's going to be able to get a good hour-ish workout in the legs today. So good on Sky. But let's get back up to the front of the group as they get through and get close to going up Leg Snapper. Sean, there's a couple different spots on this course to get power-ups. And I think we've got two banners where we're going to get power-ups. You want to tell us a little bit about what power-ups maybe are and which ones are best on this course, which could be most advantageous? There you go. I will tell you which power-ups are going to be most advantageous as we go through here. We're going to have, I think on this course, we're going to have a couple different spots to be able to get those power-ups. So I think that's important to notice. One of them after the climb might just get burned. You're not going to get a lot of use for it. But going into that climb, if anybody wants to get a breakaway, the arrow is a good one. But the lightweight, I think, is super, super key on this course just to get over that Leg Snapper, because that really is where things are going to break apart. And I think this race is a little less about trying to get away with your power-ups, but just trying to hang in by using your power. So I think the lightweight's going to be a big one. And then at the end of the race, the arrow might come into advantage. The draft might come into on some of those shallower pitches. But invisibility, it's always one that makes athletes go on attacks that weren't necessarily planning on it. So watch out for those power-ups, but definitely going to be a lot of power-ups being received and spent out here on course today. So here we go, back on course, and we've got Lenny Ramsey again taking a pull up front. That's an athlete that seems to be putting the effort in today, as well as Jackie Herring, Sean. And we seem to have a little bit of difficulties with Sean. Don't worry, I miss him. I know you miss him too, but he'll be back here in a second. But Jackie Herring has been an athlete that has really she's upped her Zwift game. She's been participating with the EVOC team, as we see on screen here, as just doing straight cycling races here on Zwift. And she's been doing a great job. She raced one of the invite races yesterday in a short crit that I know was quite painful for her, but she woke up again early this morning, got warmed up to do it all again. So thanks for Jackie coming out and making sure she gives us that solid effort. And she's in this front group. She obviously has a lot of that top end from having good history the last couple weeks and months racing on Zwift. So she's adapted to being able to get over something like a Leg Snapper hill. but she is also one that obviously, as a very, very accomplished pro triathlete, has that sustained power effort. So I think you're going to be able to see her get through these tough sections up leg snapper well, but also be able to have that sustained effort at the end of the race when it counts. And here we go. We got Maureen Mars still up there, Langridge pulling through. So definitely a lot of different athletes making sure they get their turn at the front. But I think right now, I mean, looking at the watts, they're definitely pushing a fair bit of effort. But I think they're all trying to conserve to make sure they've got the energy when they hit leg snapper again. Because again, I think this course is a little bit more about not getting dropped. It's more of a defensive course than it is necessarily an offensive course. So you're going to see in these sections of flat road, which there's a lot of on this course, you're going to see these athletes kind of just sitting in, being okay, just chilling out, doing their own thing, and then really trying to hang in on that leg snapper and just limit their efforts to leg snapper and that finish climb. Mar still sitting at the front, and she's an athlete that is a name a lot of us maybe didn't recognize going into this series, but she's a very, very talented duathlete, and she had a great success in European duathlon and a bunch of other Powerman type races. So she's one that has obviously great power on the bike. And she's been able to use that here in the Zwift races. So Maureen Moore doing a great job this morning, as she has the last few races of the series. She's won. Sean was a little bit greedy in picking Melanie Moore. He's having technical difficulties at the moment, so he's just leaving me to hang out here to dry by myself after he picks who I think was kind of the obvious pick for the race today. Which was Moore, because she is such a good climber. We've seen anytime we've had a race where we've gone up a hill, Moore has had a great performance when she's gotten up there. But right now we've got Resnikov going in to leg snapper. We got Resnikov and Langridge. Van Heerden, who's also one that Sean kind of picked off air as one that he thought would shine. But right now we're looking at Fenella Langridge in her pain cave, giving it her effort, rolling through here at 5 watts per kilo. No big deal. No big deal at all, Fenella, rolling out that. She does seem comfortable there. I mean, everybody's heart rate is, that's a per athlete situation, but someone that's riding as hard as she is still being under 160 means she's got a little bit of room to go, most likely, as they hit 8% going up this climb, up the leg snapper. She takes her pole. Amelia Watkinson, one that we said did a good job at 70.3 Worlds, pushing that pace up that climb, actually getting to the top of that climb first. She's one that definitely is okay with getting up a steep climb. She's one that takes her poles for sure. But Moore and Resnikov right now have separated themselves from the group just a little bit, with Van Heerden just behind, but it is breaking up quite a bit. I mean, Sky Monch, we did know she's off the back, so she's 50 seconds back. She's still TTing up to this group, and Resnikov right now is just gets up to Moore's wheel as they just have a few hundred meters back till they get over the leg snapper climb. How's it going?
Took a little break there for a second, but I think I'm back.
He's back. So, okay, Sean. So your pick, Mars, is now off the front with Resnikov. They've got a little bit of a gap. Do you think they'll be able to keep this one as we hit the flat section for one more lap?
It looks like they've got a couple seconds gap there. Maybe one or two will jump up there and join them. And if they do take this lead over the top and through the descent on the flats, I think they can hold it, especially since it's breaking up like into little groups at this point.
Breaks up. To me, what this shows is that there is like more credit to an athlete like Sky Monch, right? That's continuing that effort. Like, if she's still only 50 seconds back, she's still riding really, really hard. And seeing how much this group kind of separates, that she, right now she's in 10th place, but she keeps rolling as this group breaks up. She could move into fifth and sixth place by the end of the long climb today.
Yeah, and they're packing back up. Amelia Watkinson on the front now, and with Fenella Landridge. So I think, yeah, we'll probably see this group stay together. It looks like one athlete may have got popped off the back of that last little climb, Ramsey. So interesting to see this group pretty much staying together. I think we'll likely see this group packed up till we hit the bottom of the climb.
You are probably right. You tend to be pretty good at calling these things. So how are you feeling about your pick, Mar? Seems like she, like that last climb, I don't know if you saw, but she, it seemed like it was pretty easily she was able to separate from that group. So do you think, though, that she's an athlete? We haven't really had the long sustained climbs like we're going to have today. Does it take a different athlete to get over a Box Hill well versus getting up this Innsbruck KOM climb the best?
Yeah, I think this is almost twice as long. So I guess anywhere from 16 to 18 minutes for today's climb, where Box Hill is in that 6.5 to 7 minute climb. So definitely a stronger athlete, and you want to pace this climb. Usually when I'm pacing climbs on Zwift, it's being pretty conservative in the beginning, and then I never really lift the pace just because that's me. But I'm assuming these athletes will be able to kind of get out hard, not go too crazy at the beginning, because it is going to be a very long sustained climb today, and they'll probably have much better legs than I do when I get out there.
We don't agree on everything, Sean, but I'm going to agree with you on that they're definitely going to have stronger legs than you would on this climb for sure. But, so right now, here's our group that's going to battle it out on this climb. We've got Mar, Langridge, Caldwell, Withrow, Van Heerden, Herring, and Reznikov. I might have missed one in there, but I do think that's our 8 that we have on screen. Sean, offline, you talked about Van Heerden as one to watch today if she made it over those climbs with that main group. So what is it that you see in her that makes you think that she has the ability to do well in this course today, and you think she's on one of her days?
I think anyone it's really going to come down to like watts per kilogram at the end here. So 15 to 18 minutes of just the best average watts per kilogram over the top. If she can, my biggest fear would be her hanging in, especially on this like kind of punchy climb, and she's been doing a pretty good job of that so far. But we do see those gaps from Moore and Reznikov when they do push it over the top. So her, if she can stay in here to the base of this climb and then just hold a very good average watts per kilogram to the top, I think she's got a shot to place well. Sophie Caldwell still looks good, looks strong. She's always been consistent in these races. So I don't like to pick against her, but we got a great group here, and we'll let the hill play it out.
I think I forgot Sophie Caldwell. She is consistently in the front every time she races. She obviously has great top end for a sprint, but she does a very, very good job on climbs as well, and that sustained effort. So the fact that you or I did not mention her in our picks earlier, I think means she's probably gonna take it today. But again, Zwift racing is clearly about who's very strong, but it's also about who is really good at Zwift racing, right? And you might think, okay, well, you get to the end of this climb, you get to the end of this race, and it's a sustained climb, so whoever's the strongest is gonna win, regardless of how good they are at Zwift racing. But it's who gets to the base of that climb without having spent as much energy. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but I think this course is a little bit more about playing the defense and trying to use as little energy staying with the group over leg snappers so that you then can have as much as possible going into that climb.
Yeah, this definitely, like we were saying, Matt, you don't want to come to the base of this climb with your legs just shot. If you have to burn too many matches just to stay with this group, once you get to the bottom of the climb and your heart rate's kind of spiked way too many times and your legs are shot, you're not really going to be able to contend on a 17, 18-minute climb here. So you want to conserve as much energy, sit in as much as possible. Everyone's got to work hard over the leg snapper, but you want to keep it tight. You don't want to let those gaps open and have to work too hard on the back half of the leg snapper or down the descent when you should be resting. So you definitely want to stay in touch all the way through that climb.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those first athletes, they get over the leg snapper, and once that kind of group catches up, they can get in that super tuck and save as much energy as possible, and that's helpful. But right there, we had Kelsey Withrow on the screen, very accomplished, obviously pro triathlete, won some 70.3 races over the last few years after spending a long time trying to get there. She was one that we were all stoked to see get her first win, and then they all just seem to keep coming. So she's been doing a great job in triathlon, but she kind of she took a little break from triathlon in the middle of her career and was doing some straight bike racing. So Kelsey Withrow knows her way around a bike course, and she's one that I often see out on Watopia when I'm riding myself. And so she spends a ton of time on Zwift and has been doing a little bit more racing of late. So she was definitely one of the athletes that we were going to watch out for in the race today. And it seems like she is pretty comfortably in this lead group that is down to 8 riders.
Yeah, so, I mean, she's got the bike racing experience on Zwift, so she's done a ton of races over crits, climbs, like big climb courses. She's one to watch out for. She probably knows how to pace herself on these Zwift climbs more than most athletes. So definitely someone to potentially be on the podium today if she's got the legs come at the start of the KOM.
Yeah, here we go. We're back to Sky Monch. She's hanging in there. She's still putting in a solid effort. She's settled down a little bit, so she's at about 3.5 watts per kilo. She's just trying to get to that base of that climb to see what she can do when they get there. Maybe pick up a few stragglers. Lenny Ramsey is off the back as well, so she might be able to sweep her up. But it kind of depends how much on the rivet, so to speak, these athletes in the main group are, as far as if they're going to kind of get blown off. But as far as I can see, with these 8 riders, they're not pulling through exceptionally hard on this flat because I think they all know it's going to be whoever climbs the best. So I don't actually see at this point any of these athletes imploding to the 2-minute mark where Sky's going to be able to get too many of them. She might get 1 or 2. She's obviously very talented over that kind of effort. That's going to be, Sean, we're thinking for the women, it's going to be what, 17, 19 minutes, something like that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's in that 16, 18, 19-minute range, just depending on who's got good legs today. It's a 4.6 mile climb of 6%, so pretty steady. There's some 9-10% grades on there through the middle, so it's just a nice, steady, consistent climb. Nothing gets too crazy. There's no 15 to 20% grades, so it's going to be just a nice strength, steady effort all the way to the top climb, and yeah. 18 minutes should be about it.
Top of what looks like it's probably going to be about 45 minutes before they get there. But man, honestly, you wouldn't expect anything less out of Sky Monch, but super stoked to see her continue to put that effort in as we see her on the side-by-side screen as she's battling to stay as close to the main group where we have Jackie Herring pushing 4.3 watts per kilo at 166 beats per minute. And Sean, are they getting on are they kind of on the base of this climb now? Are they in the foothills, so to speak?
We'll see the dots on the road when they really start the climb. But it does look like they're starting to go slightly up. There it is. We just saw it go by. So yeah, they're officially onto the climb now, and it'll be. We'll see if anyone starts using some of their power ups early, or athletes will save them towards the end. Nice and steady climbing here, 2% to start, and it'll gradually just go up and up and up, and we'll see those 10% grades in the middle of this climb.
Now, so seeing the athletes, like, obviously, it's funny. This course is so cool because it really pays to have a couple different types of climbing style, right? Like whoever is comfortably getting over Leg Snapper Hill is not necessarily great at a long sustained climb, right? Like they kind of like that high effort, the ability to go, very high into those, 6, 7, 8 watts per kilo. Do you think, are we going to see a big attack to get distance for one of those athletes to then try to hang on? Or do you think we're just going to have a long TT of attrition and not see those attacks till late?
Yeah, I think it'll be more of an attrition up this climb. People slowly just getting the pack will string out, and then people slowly losing contact. I doubt we'll see that short burst of 8-9%, 9
Right.
watts per kilo just to try to make the gap. I think it'll happen naturally on this climb.
We have, my pick, Amelia Watkinson already 2 seconds off the back of that group. Sophie Caldwell is 2 seconds off the back of that group. Van Heerden, 1.5 and Herring is just getting back on the front, a group that has Langridge, Marr, and Resnikov, and I think Withrow is in there as well. So they're separating a little bit. It does look like Watkinson and Caldwell have a little bit of work to do, but it's separated, but it's all kind of still the same. It's going to take an effort from one of these 4 women, a hard, short, quick effort as Resnikov gets out of the saddle. That might be enough as they get up to 10% to keep that group in 5th to 7th position from catching back on.
Yeah, you see when it goes up to 9-10%, Resnikov slowly pulls off the front, and then I think that gap behind will just continually open up, and we'll start losing some of these riders. It's pretty strung out now. Most riders kind of riding on their own, or at least trying to catch one wheel, but look, almost every rider for themselves at this point, just tapping out the power they can maintain until they hit the top.
And it's going to be that athlete that has the ability to settle in. Yes, you want to separate, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if Resnikov continues to kind of, every time it gets steep, if she's going to continue to just kind of punch on those pedals a little bit to try to continue to get a little bit of separation from those other athletes.
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue to see Melanie Moore just hanging in. We'll see. It'll be fun to see if there's some kind of pushing over the top, but Resnikov setting a really steady pace here, up to 300 watts right now, 78 RPMs, heart rate's 181. So working really hard here, try to hold this consistent, steady effort, and Marr doing a great job fighting to stay on her wheel. And can't see who the third athlete is there. Is that Herring? Jackie Herring, maybe? I'm not sure.
The athlete, I think, might be Jackie Herring. We'll get on that as well. Actually, that might be Resnikov, but it looks like Van Heerden's coming across. Yeah, Jackie Herring is that 4th athlete in white. Marie Moore is 3rd, Langridge and Resnikov. That's your top 4. Van Heerden is 7.5 seconds back with Kelsey Withrow a further 6 seconds, and Sophie Caldwell 2 seconds behind her. So we're going to see if they're able to pull themselves back up. It looks like we might have had a drop out, and Resnikov has gone back. So she's going backwards through the field right there. We saw Resnikov sitting on the side of the road, a little mechanical there. So we have Langridge, Moore, and Herring is your group of 3 with 5.7K to go on this climb.
What do you think happened there, Matt? Dropped her chain?
Been a chain drop. You never know. You never know. Could have been a neighbor downloading something, a lot of bandwidth. What do you think?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. She was looking really strong, kind of pacing this nicely up the hill, but now it's down to Fenella Langridge, Melanie Moore, and Jackie Herring all in the top 3, and we'll see some trading of positions for the podium here.
My pick, and she gets out of the saddle here around the outside on the EVOC kit, is Jackie Herring. But here we go. We've got Langridge on the screen. I'm pulling for my emotional pick is Jackie Herring because she's so committed to Zwift racing. She seems to have such a good time, and anytime she has an opportunity to race, she does, even though the courses haven't necessarily suited her strengths, where today she has that ability to kind of use all of her strengths, where she is good at those high-end efforts, but she's also really good at sustained climbs. Right now, her and Fenella Langridge are trying to bridge back up to Moore, who at this point is trying to go the rest of the way on her own.
Yeah, my pick is looking really good right now. It's got a 30 to 40 meter lead, it looks like, but back to Langridge and Herring. So if this continues, looks like I'll get another one correct. It might be the second time I've actually got something right this whole race series. So looking good for me right now.
Yeah, you really went out on a limb there for that one too. I owed Sean a favor, so let him do his pick first. But right now we got Langridge and Herring, both at 4.5 watts, 4.6 watts per kilo. They're working together for sure. I mean, they're at 2%. So this group does have technically an advantage over the solo Moore up front in a section like this, right, Sean? They're at 1% grade. They're 5.5 seconds back. Can this duo pull back a Moore up the road?
I think they might be able to pull a little bit of time back here. I think anything under 3%, you start to get a little bit more of the draft effect. So a group of two should help, but it looked like it was mostly Langridge leading it out and Herring sitting. So we'll see if Herring can pull through. But now they're back onto the steep bit of the climb, 8% here. So it's just going to be power for power who's got it towards the top of this climb.
Yeah, for sure. There is 4.7 kilometers to go still. So definitely a lot left, a lot of room left for them to make up some time. But anytime it's going to go over 2%, Moore is just so good at the pure numbers, right? Like she's obviously very good at the tactics of and the Zwiftification of the racing here. But she's one that just has the watts per kilo. And I think that's what's going to go to her advantage here today.
Yeah, she's been one of the most consistent Zwift racers from the start. So she knows the courses, she knows how to race well in Zwift, and she's just been super consistent all the way through. Whether it's a Crit City course or a climb like Box Hill, she's been up there towards the top. So no surprise to see her kind of pulling away at this point. Unfortunately, with Reznikov, who had a power issue in the middle of that climb, she was looking really strong too. So we lost a little bit of a head-to-head battle between the two, but yeah, really strong riding here for Moore.
Reznikov, I see her. She's a minute and 5 seconds down, but she was pushing out 5.5 watts per kilo just a second ago. So that's one that's going to, I'm looking at like a Kelsey Withrow who's sitting in 5th place right now. They're going to have to pay attention and keep the effort up, or they're all going to get ridden down by Reznikov again, because she is putting up similar numbers to what Moore is at, and I believe she's at kind of a shallower section of the race course. But back at the front of the race with Maureen Moore at 5.4 watts per kilo. Is that what you're pushing at the end of a race coming up the climb, Sean? A little less.
I'm in that high 3s to low 4s up this climb probably at this point in
yeah, that's what I guess.
My Zwift racing, which is very amateur right now. But yeah, this is super impressive. 4.6 watts per kilogram at 7% on this climb. And she's continuing to extend that gap. Natalie Van Heerden doing really well in 4th. She's only 15 to 18 seconds down on 3rd. If she can keep it steady and any of those two, Finola Langridge or Jackie Herring, kind of falter a little bit, she might be able to sneak on the podium there. But right. Yeah, Heerden doing a great ride right now too.
She's right in there, and anywhere in the top 10 obviously is an accomplishment in this series, but the top 5 has kind of been where you've seen the best athletes finish out. Obviously consistency pays off, coming back week after week. Moore is one that, to me, it's cool to see because she's so consistent. Like, it's not a surprise. I'm not saying that you didn't indeed go out on a limb to pick her, but she's definitely, it's not a surprise to see her off the front on a course like this, because it kind of is a blending of everything she's good at with that sustained effort at the end. And it's all watts per kilo for her. And as she goes 5.3 watts per kilo at 11%, she continues to spread out. Although I would say Langridge and Herring are hanging pretty tough, Sean.
Yeah, the gap's not changed much. It's been in that 14 to 15 second range for the last couple hundred meters. So they're riding really strong, still holding 4.7, fluctuating between 4.5 and 5 watts per kilogram to maintain that 15-second gap. But Moore still just putting the pressure on, not letting the gap close down at all. And I think when she sees maybe it go to 15 seconds or 14 seconds, she kind of puts another little surge back to 5.3 watts per kilogram at the front to maintain that gap.
I think right now she can kind of just watch that gap and maintain what she needs, to be comfortable and settle in a little bit, right? As Jackie Herring is not super settled in. She's up and down out of the saddle. It gets steep. It gets a little bit shallow. She's always got kind of that smile on. We're not sure if that's a grimace or a smile, but it looks a smile. Looks like a smile coming from me from this point. So right now, Sean, we've got these two athletes. We got Jackie, who's very, very experienced Zwift racer, and Langridge, who is as well. They seem to be working really well together. Right now, they're still trying to maybe pull back our leader, Maureen Moore. But at what point does this become, wait, I still need to drop this person? Like, are we going to see attacks with 2K out, or what part of the course that's left is the best for these two athletes to separate themselves?
Yeah, part of it will depend on what power ups they have. If someone's got a featherweight, you'll probably want to use it at the steepest part of this. So waiting till you see a 9-10% pitch, use the power up, try to get or use the featherweight power up, try to get a little bit of distance. And it looks like there's a slight gap opening up now to Jackie Herring to Fenella Langridge. So we'll see if anyone uses a power up to try to, if she has anything to close that down, or if that just kind of continues here.
Yeah, you can see that, and this is a hard spot for Langridge to be able to pull that off, because it is just back down to 0% grade. So this is a good spot where Herring, with her experience, she just has to get out of her saddle, do a few hard pedal strokes, and then get back on the wheel. But what's advantageous of being on that gradient is that then she can kind of rest when she's on that wheel a little bit. But right now, there are 23 and 25 seconds back from our leader on screen, Mar, on a 10% section. It looks like Langridge is holding that gap, Sean.
Yeah, and the top three look pretty solid right now. Don't see a lot of changes happening between those three. Just the closest will be, can Jackie Herring bridge back up to Fenella Langridge and come over the top, or is it just going to kind of stay the way it is? Melanie Moore, Fenella Langridge, and Jackie Herring for the podium.
Jackie Herring, as I said, did race yesterday in the Invitational for the Tour for All. Those words are hard for me to say this morning. And she finished in the front group, which is an accomplishment in that field. But worth noting that she averaged 4.6 watts per kilo for 38 minutes. So it's possible, Sean, she's feeling a little bit of that as she tries to get up to Langridge here.
Yeah, back-to-back days on Zwift racing is extremely hard and will leave your legs a little flat, but still having a massive day today, still in the top three with all these amazing women on this course today. And I mean, we knew this was going to be a hard race and kind of break up into these little groups and really come down to this last climb. And looks kind of more of the same. Mar just tapping away up front, 5 watts per kilogram, holding strong and continuing to push that gap up to 24 to 30 seconds over the top next second and
John,
third place.
It's we got Reznikov. She has gone through Withrow and Van Heerden, so she has moved herself back into 4th place as she's pushing now 4.5 watts per kilo. So she's probably, there's not enough room for her to get back to that podium, but she was comfortably in that top 4, had a little blip and lost a minute, and she's basically held that minute to more since then. So good on her for staying in the game, so to speak, and she's now moved her way back up to 4th place.
Yeah, I mean, she's riding really strong, 5.1 watts per kilogram at the moment, and it'll give some of those other riders just a taste of and a carrot to kind of chase a little bit. It gets a little lonely out there when you're climbing just by yourself, and the gaps are pretty, set at 10 to 15 seconds apart from each rider. But when an athlete like Reznikov rolls by and you want to try to catch your wheel for just a little bit, it can up your tempo for another couple 100 meters and move you a little bit further up the course.
Right. Obviously it's a little defeating when you get caught, but watching somebody's RPMs, and watching kind of their energy on a bike, you can, it's a little bit contagious, and you can get moving up through the field there. As we have Reznikov on screen, she's certainly pushing. She's got her fan club behind her. I'm sure they were yelling at her to pick up the pace when she had that little bit of struggle earlier. But last week's winner doing a great job trying to get back up into that podium spot. But right now she's moved back into 4th place. Sean, it's worth noting the men's race has started. We're going to join them when the women's race is done. But word on the street is it has exploded a little bit already. So it might just be 1s and 2s when we get to the men's race, but looking forward to calling that with you here in just a little bit. But right now we are looking at 4th place in the women's race, and that is Reznikov, who is having a pretty solid time trial on this climb.
Yeah, just really impressive riding from Reznikov. Unfortunate for that little power drop, and that's the hard thing with Zwift. We do rely on Wi-Fi connections and your computer to run smoothly, and occasionally there is technical issues that do pop up. you may get a lag in internet connection, or your computer just starts running slow for some reason, and you're slightly delayed in where you should be. So unfortunate that happens. I mean, we see flats and punctures and chain drops on normal racing. I guess that's the risk in any bike race. You're never guaranteed to have a smooth ride all the way through, but she's come back really strong and is riding really hard to kind of prove that she could be up there. If without those technical issues, she would have been up there fighting for this win today as well.
She's doing a great job up at 8% right now, but let's go to the front of the race where we have more is coming into the Flamme Rouge, 1K to go, 1.1K right now. She's an hour into this race, about what we thought it would take, maybe a little bit longer, and she has 31 seconds over Langridge and 45 seconds over Jackie Herring, and then Reznikov is a further 30 seconds back. So she is continuing to put time into literally everyone else on the course, even though, Sean, that she has had that gap for a while. And if she wanted to, she could certainly settle in and let those athletes bring back time on her comfortably, but she continues to go all the way to the finish. Yeah,
really, really impressive riding today. And I mean, I kind of predicted this from the beginning that she was going to win this one. So good on that. But I mean, she's just been so impressive. She's been so impressive with all the racing she's done on Zwift so far. So, I mean, every week, no matter what the course is, you gotta put her up in the top 5 for sure. And impressive riding today. So, congrats to her. Great racing.
Yeah, to me it's cool because she's an athlete we now know is very consistent. Her numbers stack up with the best in the world, and I think she's gained a lot of respect from her competitors. Zwift racing is different. She's a duathlete, so she's not a name that a lot of us recognize from triathlon because she's maybe not as good a swimmer, so she doesn't shine in those races. But this is a platform that she does really well at, highlights her strengths, and I think she's gained a lot of respect from her fellow pro triathletes out on this course. Right now, Langridge is still pushing that pace, 4.6 watts per kilo. She wants to get stay as close to Maureen Moore as possible. She's not bringing back any time, but she's holding as much as she can, but still maintaining a 16-second gap over Jackie Herring. But our leader is 300 meters out from the finish here today, and she really blew that course up with some of the best athletes that we've had on the Z Pro Tri Series all on course today. All got separated pretty early and 8 to the climb, but she was able to separate herself even further from those remaining 8 athletes.
Yeah, this is one of those courses that you should really do a course recon before and know that know where the leg snapper is and know exactly how long it takes to get up, know that you're going over it 3 times, and know that it's basically all out up to the leg snapper over the top and then catch the descent. And looks like Melanie Moore just crossed the finish line there. So is that the finish? Looks like it was.
That was it.
Yep.
She got it.
She's changed back to her jersey. So congrats to Melanie Moore. That was really
Yeah, she crossed that finish line, immediately changed into the QOM jersey, Sean. So good work on her. Well deserved. We have second athlete, Fenella Langridge, coming across the finish line right now. No doubt that was a super hard effort. I mean, it's hard if you don't realize how hard this race course was, make sure to go out and ride it yourself or in a race as fast as you can, because that leg snapper sets you up for this last 15 to 20 minute time trial up this climb to be very, very painful, as we have Jackie Herring coming across the line.
Yeah, every time I go out and race this the Innsbruck flat loop, we just call flat or Innsbruckring, that leg snapper is a total surprise, and it's way harder than you think it is, especially the way most Zwifters ride up it. It's pretty much max effort and then recover, max effort, recover. So they're going to do that 3 times, and it will separate a lot of people in today's racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it did so in the women's race. It went down to a group of 11 pretty quickly. And the word on the course is that the men's race has blown up equally dramatically just one time over leg snapper. So awesome race from the women today. A lot of strong efforts up front. It did look like Moore kind of had it all day with just the way she was going up that climb. And who else stood out to you today, Sean, besides obviously our race winner Moore?
Reznikov was looking really strong strong. It looked like it would have been a great head-to-head battle between her and Melanie. Nelly Van Heerden, again, great racing. I thought she would do pretty well on that, and it looks like she did, pulling into fifth, 1 minute and 56 seconds behind. But Kelsey Withrow, also a solid race, and Sophie Caldwell consistently in the top 10, and another good one. Nice to see Amelia Watkinson do her first race. I think it's 2 a.m. where she's at, so impressive for her to even be awake at this point. So awake and on a bike and holding 3.6 watts per kilogram for the entirety of that race.
A great race from all those women on screen, but obviously most so to Melanie Moore. She was all class today, was able to be the one more times than not that caused the split on leg snapper, but then had it in her legs at the end for the KOM. So congrats to Moore. And we are going to move over to the men's race that is well underway. They've done, I believe it's just one lap over the leg snapper, and we're going to join their race in process and see who's it going to be on the men's side to follow suit, Maureen Moore. And we have, shocker, Sean, Vanderdrijs off the front already.
That's one of my predictions today was going to be Vanderdrijs will attack. It was one I knew I could get right. We've seen it over and over in Zwift racing on Crit City, and especially on Crit City, he was constantly attacking. So no surprise to see him off the front holding 6 watts per kilogram here. Joe Skipper chasing really hard to try to catch him. And this is a nice little group we might see here form at the front with Joe Skipper and Vanderdrijs. That's a strong pair.
Statement for sure, Sean. Joe Skipper is another one that I kind of expected to animate things a little bit. This is pretty far out to be going on a 2-man breakaway, especially when you've got athletes like Lionel Sanders, James Kunema, Phil Graves, and Jackson Laundrie in the group chasing just 4 seconds back. But if I would assume maybe Vanderdrijs got the ghost and he just couldn't help himself. But that dude, no matter what, if he has an opportunity to go it alone, even if it's for just a few seconds, he takes it. But right now he's got a partner in crime with Joe Skipper. Those two have now 4 seconds, Sean. Now, how long about do you think till we get over that leg snapper for the second time?
This is a nice little gap. Yeah, they were coming back around. It looks like they're going back to the city and we'll hit the leg snapper in another maybe couple K. But this is a nice group up front. Yeah. Joe Skipper is super strong. Vanderdrijs loves to go on the attack. But we do have a pretty solid pack behind. We'll see if they can pull them back, but really strong duo up front. So it's fun to see somebody make an attack and try to animate the race. So really interesting riding right now.
Yep. To be the one to put his hand up every week to animate the race. Sean, real quickly, just for those that just joining us, let's go over the race format a little bit here today. We are at the Innsbruck KOM after party out here in Zwift land. We got Kenneth Vanderdrijs at the front of this course. But the course here today, Sean, if you looked at it on paper, it would seem like it's a flat race until you get to a climb, but it's really a lot more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's when you look at the map, it looks relatively flat, especially for the first 30K before we hit the base of the KOM. But there is this little climb called Leg Snapper that's 450 meters at 8%, and it looks like they're just getting into it right now. And this is where a lot of the attacks and separation are going to happen. If you're not ready for this short, punchy climb, you will get spit out the back, and it'll be nearly impossible to get back onto the group. So we've got to be really, really on top of it here. It's almost a minute and a half maximum effort up this climb, and then try to save it on the descent, and then it flattens out again. So big power here. You see a lot of numbers going into orange. You'll see a lot of power-ups used on this little short kicker. So again, just Skipper at the front.
Yeah, the group behind is chasing really hard. You can tell that they're putting an effort in to bridge up to this lead duo. They were going over 8 watts per kilo there for a second. They were at 8 seconds going into leg snapper. Now it's just 1 second, and it looks like the group is all together. But Sean, tell us how important it is. It might look like this athlete on the back who's using the right power up, Philip Graves, it might look like they're safe, but how hard is it to stay with this group on this descent?
Yeah, that's the really hard part of leg snapper is those little gaps. It doesn't look like much when you're on the climb, But once you go over the top and make that right-hand turn and start descending, if you have that gap, it is hard to get on top, get back into the pack. Philip Graves using a good double draft there, just off the back, pulled him right back into the pack. So he's solidly there and should be able to kind of rest and recover at this point. But you don't want to see any gaps over the top of that climb.
Textbook by Philip Graves. If anybody was paying attention, he actually was not the athlete in white. He's in black near the end of the group, but he found himself on Lake Snapper. You want to find yourself getting over the climb, if your legs will allow it, kind of in the middle of that group. And once they start descending, you hit that high speed and you're able to super tuck. And what you saw Graves do was super tuck. You can see he wasn't pedaling, so he was resting while maybe some others were still pedaling. And then once the pedaling was necessary again, once they slowed down enough, he then hit his double draft. So he's coming out of that climb of descent a lot fresher than others that maybe weren't as smart tactically over the backside of that climb.
Yeah, in combination of using the double draft and the super tuck, he'll get a good 10, 15, maybe 20 seconds at tops rest, which is super important in this type of racing where you've just gone really hard, near max effort for a minute over the top of that climb, and you really want to get that recovery on the bottom. If you have to chase down that hill and try to catch back on, that's where those matches just get consistently burned, and by the time you get to the bottom of the KOM today, you're just going to be flat and out of power.
It's one of those things that this course is about, staying off that rev limiter as much as possible, right? Like you want to make sure you're not in the red the whole time. And if you make little errors and you don't use tactics wisely going over leg snapper, not only will that effort get you, but the fact that you're just having to make up little gaps, that's going to put you into the red a little bit more than normal. Anthony Costas is one that obviously has the power to be able to get over leg snapper with the rest of the athletes and maybe push the pace and spread the group out a little bit. But he's also one, Sean, that tactically has showed himself very, very consistent over the weeks before. So we've got the riders that are out here still remaining in the group. We haven't had a chance to make our picks yet. I'm going to let you take first pick again. You really went out on a limb in the women's race, picking more. Who are you going to pick today? The men.
I'm going to go with Costas. He lost power last week in Crit City right at the start of the race. Was super bummed about it, but he's back this week, looking strong, and I think this course will suit him.
Call. I think it's a really good call. I will say I'm gonna go with Sanders. I think he's been waiting for a course that he can just show his kind of brute strength. I think it's awesome to see him really commit to Zwift racing and the tactics involved and the gamification of it. So that's been cool. But in the end, I think that guy just likes to hurt himself and to hurt those around him. So my pick for today's race is Lionel Sanders, and easy enough for us, Sean. We've been able to pick athletes after the split has been made.
Yeah, it makes our job a little bit easier, but again, we typically pick wrong. So even with it whittled down to about 10 athletes, and if we each had 4 picks, we'd still probably get it wrong. But
times then we're right. But I like putting it out there anyways. But right now we've got on screen, we have Ronnie Schildneck, who's been one that has been very consistent. I think the first couple races he was maybe surprised at how fast everybody went off the front or off the line, but he's now one of those instigators, and he has that raw power. And he's looking at him, Ronnie is built. He's a strong athlete. He's maybe weighs a little bit more than these other athletes. So I think his tactics are going to be to tire these other athletes out as much as possible going over leg snapper. An athlete like him, he's going to be able to get over that, I think, pretty comfortably. But it's that sustained 20, 15-minute climb that he's going to have to make sure everybody's just as tired or more tired than he is by the time they get to it. Oh, we've got Ronnie still on screen, pushing that effort very well as we have this small group remaining in the race here today. Let's see who else we have in there. We got Lionel Sanders there pulling through as well. And we had Jackson Laundrie in that group, as well as Joe Skipper. We've got an athlete making an attack through the middle of the group. We'll see who that is. It's gone straight to the front as they get close to heading up the leg snapper climb once again. But right now we've got Odin taking his pole, Vanderdrijs taking a pole, Kunema, our race winner last week. He timed that race to absolute perfection last week. So really, really good job by James Kunema, and I think he's obviously ready to have a great performance back here today. So right now we got Jackson Landry, Sheldon, Vanderdrijs, and Sanders all at the front of the group as they get ready to hit the leg snapper again. And here we go, still rolling here through really smoothly. We got Costas, Chase, Sheldon. This group in this flat section, I think now that they've kind of dispatched some of the, we'll call it pack fire, no disrespect, but they've dispatched a fair amount of the athletes. I think they know now that this group is going to continue to try to stretch it out over that leg snapper, and it's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a lot of quote-unquote fireworks in these flat sections of this course before we hit maybe that last lap. You might see that. Of course, anytime I say that, Vanderdrijs is the exception to the rule for sure. So Vanderdrijs is one that's always going to try to push, regardless of if it's a flat or if it's a climb. But I think we have this large group, Sean. I think we're going to see them just kind of look at each other and wait for the pain on leg snapper and then that final climb.
Dropped out again. Great morning.
He's back.
Not my day.
It's okay. It's fine. But on screen right now, we got Kunema and Sanders rolling through the front. I was just kind of talking through the fact that we're probably not going to see a lot of action in these flat sections in between the repeats of leg snapper. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's still feeling fresh after that, after going up leg snapper into the descent, they're likely not going to. I mean, you might see Vanderdrijs make, but the rest of them are probably just refreshing, saving their legs, making sure they get up and over leg snapper, and conserving energy just at the bottom of the KOM today.
Yeah, Sean, I'm never one to doubt anybody's tactics. Well, that's not true. I doubt people's tactics all the time, but I try not to call them out on the coverage for their tactics, and I'm not going to do that here. But I will say, the way he is so confident when he goes away and tries to do these little breaks, I would love to see him get to the base of this climb where it is a solo effort at the end, as rested and recovered as possible. And clearly that's not his tactic. He wants everybody to be kind of what I was saying with Ronnie Schildneck. You know, these athletes that are better at sustained efforts, you know, sometimes you want to make sure that those other athletes are really tired going to that climb. And maybe Vanderdrijs knows that he has that ability to continue to burn matches and then have a really good steady effort at. Like, look how settled in he is right now. So I'm not doubting his effort, but I'd love to see him very fresh into the base of that climb, because I think he's one that could be a podium finisher, because I do think he has that engine, and maybe tactically it's the tactics that have kind of gotten him from finishing on the podium in that Zwift race. And smart, I mean, this is a tactic, and I would say there's probably not that many men that have taken nutrition in this short of a race, and Vanderdrijs about halfway through, knowing he's got a 15-20 minute solo effort, hits a gel. To me, that's a sign he's going to have a good one.
Yeah, and this race is a little bit longer than the ones we've been doing in the past. So instead of that 30 to 35 minute race, this one will be around 50 to 55, I believe. So definitely smart to take energy in, especially halfway through, and knowing that a big climb is coming up. But yeah, his tactics, I think he wants to hit the climb with a group of 3 or 4 of just strong riders, and not let it come down to Costas and Lionel. Right. Some of those, you know, lighter athletes that are just good at tapping out 5.5 watts per kilogram for 16 minutes. He'd like it to break up, have them start behind, and have them chase him up the climbs. All start together.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair call for sure. Another athlete that probably is thinking similarly is Joe Skipper. He's one that we haven't seen race with us here yet, Sean, and I'm super stoked to see him out on the course as well today. And he's an athlete that I think can do it either way, right? He can be the instigator up over leg snapper, or he can be the one that saves it to the final climb. And when we were with the women's race, all I was hearing on my text was that Joe Skipper is lighting it up. So he definitely was aggressive early, and I think he's going to continue to be so. But let's see what happens coming up leg snapper again, Sean.
And Vinder Dries again towards the front, pushing the pace again, also with Chase. So it's Vinder Dries definitely being aggressive, trying to see if anyone will kind of come across some of those breaks with him. They're going through town now. We'll make a right-hand turn and then really get to the bottom of leg snapper, and I think the fireworks are going to go off again.
A battle, you see the watts per kilo go up as they enter kind of the lead up to leg snapper, because it is all about position. You kind of want to, if you were me, you'd be as far to the front of the group as possible so that you could lose more places and still be in the group. You don't really want to start in the back if you're not as great a climber as everybody else. But we see Laundry hits his featherweight, a bunch of featherweights going, a double draft going. I don't think that's going to do a bunch, but it might do something. And that athlete's certainly hoping that it's going to do something. But these athletes at 8%, it's staying together right now. It doesn't seem like anybody's being super aggressive. Actually, there might be an athlete going off the front that I can't quite see from this angle, Sean.
Yeah, a little bit of a misfire there for someone using a double draft on an 8% climb, but you'd like to see that over the top, especially the guy in the front too. It's a little bit of a mistake, and that could be just some of the tack not being as sharp on Zwift racing as some of the other athletes. You're just misfiring those power-ups at just the wrong time, and it's just not giving you the advantage it could if you used it properly.
Experience, right? And I think, you saw Philip Graves. He's been an athlete that's been at basically every round of our race series, and you saw him use it to perfection because he has that experience. And that was Joe Skipper that used it, in the wrong place. And he'll learn that after this week as, this group catches him. If he had that double draft, he could have hit that button and just kind of recovered as they start pedaling again, the short little 5% grade. Group looks like it's all together. I don't think they lost anybody over that. It didn't look like there was much effort to catch Joe Skipper. They were all happy to let it wait till that descent, and that was a strong move. James Cunnama pulling through the front of the group, maybe trying to expose some of those athletes after that hard effort.
Yeah, and Cunnama won on Crit City last week, so he's definitely one to watch and keep an eye on once we start this climb. He's shown to be really good with Zwift tactics and racing well so far. So great group of riders here. A lot of the same names we've seen all series that are tactically really good on Zwift, and they're going to need it, especially over those short bumpy climbs before we hit the base of the KOM today.
And I'm glad we're over. We don't have any more leg snapper because apparently there's a drinking game that's been occurring every time we say that word. So we don't have to say that anymore. So put your drinks down, everybody. But we have Vinder Dries going through the front of this little group. Actually, somebody going off the front is Joe Skipper again at 7 watts per kilo, trying to get away. He does not want to get to the base of this climb with anybody else. So he's sacrificial lamb here a little bit. Joe Skipper, if he gets 4 or 5 seconds, who do you think is going to go across? Oh, he's trying already. Vinder Dries.
I think, yeah, it was kind of obvious. I'm going to pull for Vinder Dries to try to make an attack there. Yeah, we've seen Lionel be a little more conservative, and typically I would have said Lionel would try to make a bridge across here, but he's been a little bit. I think he's learned quite a lot from racing, either whether it's in Zwift Classics or on the Super League, of how to ride in the packs and let some of these one rider go off on his own. If he sees a group of 3 to 4, I could see Lionel make that jump. But yeah, Joe Skipper really pressing the pace here, yes. 412 watts off the front, trying to open up this gap and make it a race between a couple riders once they start the bottom of the climb.
And the impetus on that group and the athletes in that group to take strong pulls, and they're kind of looking at each other, being like, I don't want to pull it back, you pull it back. And you have right now Nick Chase has been at the front. He's doing a fair bit of work trying to keep this. And what I'd love to see is Vinder Dries sitting, and you wait till there's a decent effort, somebody's setting a good tempo, and then you do a very, very hard attack and you get across quickly. and then you try to work with Joe Skipper. Again, easier said than done. I got a cup of coffee in my hand. I'm pretty relaxed. Those guys, their heart rate's over 190, although the diesel Joe Skipper at 155 as he's pushing 410 watts. So pretty good move from him. But groups spread out. You can see Joe in the distance, but this group working together, but not pushing a ton of watts. It doesn't look like they're that concerned. And I think somebody's got to try to make that bridge.
Yeah, and it looks like Lionel's moving himself towards the front. Same with Costas. They're both towards the front, but don't really want to put their nose in the wind and lead it and pull anybody else up. But definitely some smart riding there. They're kind of waiting to see if Skipper's attack grows or if it kind of maintains in that 3 to 4 second gap before really taking it seriously.
I'd say that's a good call. We got Costas pretty comfortable, 130 beats per minute. How casual is Anthony Costas right now?
Yeah, he's just he's cruising along right now. He might that room down at 45 degrees Fahrenheit to keep him cool with a heart rate that low. Really good riding. He's definitely saving something for the final KOM.
John, when you're Zwifting, gloves or no gloves? Costas is gloves.
I go no gloves. I never wear gloves on a bike. It's just something I've never got used to and never liked, and still don't do it even when I'm Zwifting. I'm more of the towel
Here
guy,
we go.
towel on the handlebars.
There we go. Okay, it's starting to spread out, Sean. This is actually starting to be legitimate. Not that it wasn't before, but this is how these efforts work. You just saw Joe Skipper went under that banner. He was pumped to get the aero power up, so he used that right away, extended his gap to 8 seconds. So now, Sean, this is actually a gap that is probably too far out for one athlete to bridge. You know, when it's 3 or 4 seconds, you could do a super hard effort, maybe bridge across and make it a group of 2. But right now, this is Joe Skipper versus everyone.
Yeah, and he's definitely, he's committed. He came through that banner, got the aero power up, used it immediately to maintain that gap off the front, and it's built up to almost 10 seconds. And like you said, that is a gap that you don't want to try to close by yourself. So Lionel and Van der Drijs and Kunema and Shieldnik, Costas all need to work together here if they want to close this down before the bottom of the climb. If not, it's going to be watt per kilo and athlete versus athlete up this climb with Joe Skipper with an 11, 12, 13 second advantage potentially.
The question is he in a comfortable spot, right? Like, so he's at 5.3 watts per kilo. Can he hold 5.3 watts per kilo or 5.5 watts per kilo on the flats and then actually move a little bit higher up in his watts per kilo when he hits that climb? If that's true, at 12 seconds gap now, he's going to probably have a great chance of winning. The question is, if these athletes behind, they're only pushing 3.5, maybe 4 watts per kilo, are they going to bring any time back? I kind of don't think so. And I'm asking a lot of questions in a row, not giving you a chance to answer. My last question, Sean, is how much time is Lionel Sanders comfortable giving Joe Skipper before he just goes to the front of this group and starts pushing the pace?
At this point, I think Lionel's going to wait to the climb. He's conserving his energy, riding at 3.5 watts per kilogram. He's going to look to just have to go even harder on the climb. I think you'll see Lionel riding at 5.8, 6 watts, 6.2 watts per kilogram for the majority of the KOM once they start that climb.
I do think, I think if Lionel has it within 30 seconds, he's going to be able to pull up to Joe Skipper. Joe is a very, very, very strong cyclist. And I said very a lot just then, but I still think I'm understating how good of a cyclist Joe Skipper is. So it's going to be no easy feat to bridge a gap up to him. But looking at Philip Graves, you can tell how casual this group is. Like they were working very, very hard. He is pushing out a lot of watts still, but he's not respirating that much. He's able to get a drink pretty casually. So they're going to be rested going into this climb. And then I think it's going to be a very different climb, in my opinion. You tell me if you think I'm wrong, Sean. Very different climb than the women's race. I do not think it's going to be a slow burn of attrition. I think we're going to see very, very hard efforts as soon as it goes up.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think the men's with this field at the base of that climb will go very hard, and we'll see a lot of 7.5, 8.5 watts per kilograms to start, and then they'll settle in. But we saw Philip Graves there again, had a double draft, using it on the flat before coming into the climb, really to try to save his legs, rest as much as possible, get a drink, and be as ready as possible before they start the climb, which looks like Joe Skipper's just turned and is going to get on to the official start of the climb. Really,
he's almost there. He's got his gap still. He's got 16 seconds. Am I right in thinking there's no power-ups left? Right, Sean? Skipper's out of power-ups?
Yeah, he went through that finish banner, used his arrow power, which is what is part of the tactics. That he really was committed to that break, used it there to try to extend his gap, and he did. He extended it up to 10 seconds, and now starting the climb, he's 16 seconds off, where he could have saved it and tried to use it if he thought there would have been a sprint finish at the top. This climb does level off slightly right towards the finish, so it is beneficial to use arrow power up towards the finish, and especially in the last 100 meters. But here we go. They're all onto the climb, and we're going to see if that gap continues to stay at 16 seconds, or if these athletes, Grant Sheldon, Vander Dries, can kind of pull it back right at the very beginning.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see, once we hit that 6-7% grade, we're going to see what Joe really has. Right now he's at 5.4 watts per kilo, 5.5. If he's able to push into the sixes and stay there comfortably, I think he's going to have a great chance of holding on to that the win possibly, but more likely, I think, a podium position, because you do have very, very talented climbers. You got somebody pushing in a hard effort as they get to the front of the group. Strong climbers in Costas. Sanders just went back again and got, he said for the last time, he got the Mountain Lemon KOM just a few weeks ago. So that's an athlete that's very, very good at climbing and takes a lot of pride in his climbing. He's pushing the pace at the front of this group as they hit 7%. So the group's at 7%, 16 seconds separate them. Joe Skipper doing a great job. And I think right now, he's able to settle a little bit, Sean, while the athletes behind, they're hitting that. We're talking about that rev limiter. They're in the red, no doubt.
Yeah, and that is one of the advantages. Joe made that move early, and he's been able to just keep pretty consistent, steady power. So he's been riding at 5 to 5.5 watts per kilogram, which is still very hard and very high, but he hasn't had to make any big spikes. I think we're going to see a lot of those big spikes in power, 7.5 watts from Lionel or Vander Dries at the very beginning, which Joe's doesn't have to do. That's going to spike everyone else's heart rate. Yeah. You see Nick Chase kind of getting popped off the back here. 330 watts and a heart rate of 173. So we're athletes struggle at the back using power-ups early to try to just maintain connection here. And again, there he goes, Nick Chase using his featherweight to try to just maintain, to stick on the wheel there and kind of conserve energy as this gap continues to open up.
Yes. Hats off to our producers by putting the Chase cam on Nick Chase. We see Joe Skipper. Did he just get passed by the entire group? He just got passed
by a group, yeah, and he's going backwards pretty quickly.
There we go. So Lionel Sanders absolutely throttling as they hit the bottom of this climb. So he's at 6.2 watts per kilo, Costas 6.7. Sean, that 16-second gap was erased really quickly. I mean, obviously it caught all of us. It caught me and you off guard as we saw that group just blow by Joe Skipper.
Yeah, and it looks like he's struggling right now. He's only 4.8 watts per kilogram, 4.5 watts per kilogram, 7 seconds behind now, where Lionel is holding 6.5 watts per kilogram at the front. So really going hard here, making up that gap super quick and kind of just rolling right by Joe Skipper like he was standing still.
See these three athletes that have been instigators in the last few weeks and clearly some really tough battles between Lionel Sanders and Anthony Costas. They're going to be driving that effort, as is Vander Dries. So if those three continue just to kind of left-right punch each other, we're going to see the watts continue to be over 6 watts per kilo. But that's only going to last so long. They're going to have to settle in on kind of some of these more lower gradient sections of the climb, but we're not there right now. 10% grade, almost 7 watts per kilo there for a second by Costas, but it's starting to separate. Reese Barclay is now 6 seconds back, so it's a group of 7 with Sheldon, Schilderink, Kunema, Odin, Sanders, Costas, and Vander Dries.
Yeah, really, really good pack there. grouping back up after that that strong move by Lionel. The top 10, Joe Skipper's not even in the top 10 anymore. That kind of that risk he took going off the front, getting that 15-second gap, is definitely hurting him at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously, hats off. We're stoked to see it. And it's possible that he was putting himself in a position to still win the race, but you can't just hold 5.5 watts per kilo. You have to be able to punch it to 7 and to hold 6.5 for a while. 6 watts per kilo again in this group. Actually, not as we're seeing from Ronnie Schildneck sitting at 6 watts per kilo again in this group. Actually, not standing on his bike at 155 beats per minute. That is a diesel engine right there, everybody, pushing 500 watts at that heart rate. But right now, this group, we do see somebody a little bit gapped off the back. I wonder if that's Philip Graves in the dark outfit, but we do have, he's back up on. So we've got Odin Kunema in that group. So we've got about 7 athletes left in this group. Sean, who's the pick? Still your original pick?
Yeah, I'm still liking Costas. He's been pretty both been really conservative in this race. He's they've both not taken a lot of pulls, been conservative, and not had to use a lot of energy to stay connected here.
I think, I'd love to say if this group stayed together, we've got 5K to go. If it stayed together, I'd put my money on like a Ronnie Schildneck or a James Kunema, just because they're so strong. And I think still have, with that strength, if everybody's very tired, they'll have a very good sprint left. But it's all, you can't look past Lionel Sanders. But right now, it does look like there's a little bit of a gap. Sorry, we missed that. We got Van der Dries and James Kunema, athlete I was just talking about, a little bit off the front of the group. So they're just about 2 seconds off. Van der Dries, this is what he wants. He wants open road in front of him and empty wheel to his back, and he wants to just go and settle in. And right now he's at 450 watts per kilo, and as a light guy, that puts him about 7 watts per kilo at 400 something watts. So great effort by him. 170 beats per minute. You can see him. He's got that kind of grimace. He's kind of chewing on the stem here a little bit. He's got that fan turned up high, no doubt. But Kenneth Van der Dries finally finds that open road, and he's committed, but he's got Lionel Sanders, James Kunema, Ronnie Schildneck that want to pull that gap back. We've lost Sean here, so it's sadly, everybody, it's just me for now, but we got Kenneth Van der Dries at 400 watts and about 6 watts per kilo on his own on this 9% grade. Let's get that overhead shot, or kind of that group shot, and we can see what the gap is behind the leader here, Van der Dries. But he has open road in front of him and behind. There we go. Thanks, team. So it's 4 seconds to Lionel Sanders. Costas is on Lionel's wheel. Lionel is at 6 watts per kilo. So they're pushing about the same watts per kilo as our leader, Van der Dries. So they're not really bridging, they're kind of holding, right? They've seen Van der Dries do this before. They've seen Van der Dries get a gap, and every time he's done it, at a certain point, it's come back. But they need to decide pretty quickly if they think on a sustained climb where they're not getting that much assistance by being in a group, they need to decide pretty quickly whether or not they think watts per kilo, they can battle Van der Dries if they kind of want to go mano a mano, so to speak. But right now, Costas puts in an effort, 7.5 watts per kilo as it gets steep. So they're going to use these steeper sections to both bring back time on Van der Dries, but also not give advantage to those athletes that are with them as they try bringing that gap back, right? Like if it's on a flatter section of road and they try to pull back, they're just going to bring everybody back with them. Am I right?
Yeah, and it looks like here they're clawing back. He's still got a little bit of gap off the front, 2 seconds, but they're getting closer and closer, and still a pretty solid gap behind. But Van der Dries not willing to throw in the towel and give up. He's fighting really hard to keep that gap at 3 seconds right now.
So right now it's been, the gaps are opening and closing pretty quickly, and it's pretty dependent on the gradient. The only athletes that's not really adjusting his effort with the gradient is Vanderdrijs. He's at a time trial effort now. It's about him getting from where he's at to the finish line as quickly as possible. There's no real tactics left. He's kind of committed to this, and it continues to spread out, and that's kind of what he needs to do, right? So they're at 6 seconds as they hit this 10% grade, but the gaps are now kind of together. So we have a group of 6 with Odin, Sheldon, Schildek, Costas, and Lionel Sanders are all chasing, and they're at 7 seconds back, Sean. So with 3.5K to go, if somebody wants to win this race, I think they need to wait for a steep section and try to jump across. I don't think this group, the way they're riding together, is going to pull back Vanderdrijs.
No, and they're hitting 10% right now. So this is the time to really push it. They're going to have to hit 5.5 to 6 watts per kilogram sustained for probably the rest of this climb if they want to try to pull Vanderdrijs back. Vanderdrijs has been pretty consistent in that 5.5 watts per kilogram. So any of these other riders are going to have to go above and beyond right now. And it looks like Lionel is starting to push the pace and go to the front to make that move.
He's left a little bit of a gap, and again, that's smart racing. If you're going to put an effort in, might as well do it in a section and in a manner where you're not giving somebody kind of a free ride. As we see Costas, it looks like kind of putting in some hard little bursts to try to get back on Sanders' wheel. But again, at that gradient, they're not getting that much of an advantage by being on that wheel. But it looks like it's still 6 seconds between Vanderdrijs and Sanders. And Sean, I love seeing this from Vanderdrijs. We've talked about it. He's if we had a most combative jersey, it wouldn't say most combative. It would just say Kenneth Vanderdrijs on it. Like that, this kid goes after it every week.
Yeah, I mean, this has been his MO for the last couple of races, always making attacks, always going off the front. And it's great to see him do it here on a really hard climb. So holding really strong right now, 330 watts, 169 heart rate, not too crazy. We don't know what his max is, but really pushing well right now, keeping that gap off the front and kind of staying away from a lot of these little attacks from both Lionel and Costas in the second group right now.
Each other up, and that's the thing, right? Is like I think they're trying to pull back, but they're trying to do so again, not in a manner where they're pulling everybody with them, because you have Costas and Sanders, but I think the danger men in that group, if it stays a group of 4 or 5, are Ronnie Schildek and James Cunnama, because I think they have that just power and that strength. If they're there, they're going to have that sprint left, where maybe some of these other athletes might not. Clearly, Sanders is going to have a decent sprint because he has so much experience, but I think those two are they're bigger athletes. They're pushing a lot of watts to get up this climb with these other athletes. So I think if they have the opportunity to sprint, they're going to have that energy to put a pretty effective sprint at the end.
Yeah, and we saw Cunnama time it perfectly last week on Crit City. He sat in, he waited for Lionel to make his attack, and then wind came across and over the top right at the finish line last week. So he's got the sprint power. He's got the tactics, and if he can kind of sit in, wait for this course to flatten out, and if they can catch Vanderdrijs, watch out for Cunnama across the line as well.
But again, if they're trying to pull this gap back, again, somebody has to take the impetus and do a very, very hard effort. At this point, it's over, right? In my opinion, 13 seconds, unless Vanderdrijs has a dropout or a cramp or something crazy, he's won this race, unless somebody puts in that finish type effort now and hopes that they can hold on to it, right? Like they need to do their sprint finish now to bridge across and then just see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see is if anybody from that second group goes, it's going to have to be their final kick to the finish. So maybe they end up going from a little further out than they wanted to. Maybe it's 500-600 meters out, and they're going to have to go hard and try to maintain it all the way to the finish, knowing it's not going to be a sprint finish, but that they're going to try to get Vanderdrijs at the line. In 17 seconds at this point, it's going to be very, very hard, if impossible, for these guys to close it up, unless Vanderdrijs falters pretty bad.
It has to be now. There's just the way the road is and the distance remaining. Like if they get within 1.5K, there's no way they're going to pull it back. I kind of don't think there's any way they can do it now, but we need to see Costas out of the saddle pushing his 8-9 watts per kilo right now on 5%. Yeah, that's not when you want to do it, but if you're trying to win the race, that's kind of what you have to do. But Sean, I kind of think these athletes are looking at each other. I think they're fighting for second. I think they're resigned to that second place. And as I speak, somebody's putting in a hard effort of this 8% grade.
Yeah, I do kind of agree. I think they made some strong pulls a couple 100 meters ago. Didn't really close down the gap. When it was at 3 seconds, they'd gotten it down a little bit, but Van der Drijs came back over the top and extended it. And at this point, yeah, it looks like Lionel and Costas are both moving really hard right now. Lionel finally dropping his featherweight, and he's going to push really hard now. This is his move to the finish.
Knowing the course really well, right? So he knows he's got a feather. It's at 8% with the last K is flat. So if he separates himself from this group, he doesn't want Costas with him, but he'll take it and then he'll deal with that tactic when he gets there. But that was great tactics from Lionel Sanders, pushing that over 7 watts per kilo to try to get rid of everybody with him, but try to get some sort of gap back from Kenneth Van der Drijs, who has this race under control. With that huge effort, Costas and Sanders are now just 12 seconds back, but I do think Kanema and Ronnie Stoldenk are going to be able to bridge up, and I think we're still going to have that group of 4 fighting it out for second place. But Van der Drijs still 11 seconds, this 10% grade, just about coming under that banner, Sean.
Yeah, and we saw Lionel make that move. Costas jumped on his wheel really quick, held it, Lionel wasn't able to get away, and they closed down the gap a little bit, under 10 seconds to Van der Drijs. It looks like they just came under the 1K to go banner, so there's still a chance here. Costas really pushing hard here, 7.5 watts per kilogram.
Costas is going.
Seconds. It's going to be close.
Yeah, putting in that finish effort now, and he's pulled it within, it looks like 6 seconds. But again, this last K is pretty flat, and Van der Drijs, if he can get up to 6 watts per kilo just for moments at a time, he's going to hold him off. But Sean, we might have spoke too early. 3% grade. It looks like somebody's coming across.
It's got to be Costas. It looks like Costas and Sanders were coming across. It looks solely like Costas here. He might just get him here. 1% grade here. He's closing very fast. And I don't know if Van der Drijs is going to have enough left over the top of when this comes to a sprint finish.
And my picture is breaking up, but I do think that's Costas. He gets on the pedals and accelerates around Van der Drijs, 4% grade. Van der Drijs, he knew he was coming. So does he have enough energy to sit in that wheel? It looks like it's spreading out, but let's see if Van der Drijs has any response. With 400 meters to go, we have Costas to Van der Drijs.
And the road is flattened out, so this is a time where Van der Drijs can catch his wheel, catch the draft, save it, and then really try to come hard over the top right at the line. So we'll see if that plays out that way. But Costas still pushing super hard, 7.9 watts per kilogram, 300 meters to go.
200 meters to go, and we have Van der Drijs comes around Costas. Under 200 meters to go. Costas was they're both in the red right now. Van der Drijs in the front.
Too early?
I don't know. Costas coming back around. As they go underneath the banner, it looks like Van der Drijs over Costas, and I think Sean, Van der Drijs
close, very close there. Really close finish there. What a finish! Lead change 3 to 4 times in the last 400 meters between Costas and Van der Drijs. What a race! Huge move from Costas to pull Van der Drijs back before it flattened out. What a race! And we'll see if Van der Drijs finally, being aggressive, might have taken the win there. It looks like he did. We'll see. Wait for the final results.
But I'm pretty sure he did. And I don't know, Sean.
Costas.
It was Costas. How was out of
wow.
That? So close. Man, Van der Drijs. I was just going to say I'm printing out posters of Van der Drijs to put on my wall because that guy races like a champ. He goes for the solo, and he still was able to get on that wheel, but he barely missed out.
It was a little bit of a tactical mistake there, I think, from Van der Drijs. Costas made such a strong move to catch him before it flattened out, went around him. Van der Drijs, when it flattened out to 0%, got on his wheel, went a little early. I think he went with 200 meters to go, and Costas then was able to sit on his wheel and get him right at the line. 0.046 seconds for the win over Van der Drijs.
I think you're right. I mean, again, easy for you and I to say as we drink our cup of coffee here watching, what Van der Drijs should have done differently. But yeah, he went just a little bit too early. But athletes behind Lionel Sanders probably would be a little disappointed I think this is a course that he was looking forward to finish on kind of that sustained effort. But when you have that many class athletes around and you hit a group of the base of a climb like this with a group like that, it's still going to be tactical, and you're still not probably just going to go to the front and push as many watts as you can. You kind of have to look around, and I think Van der Drijs set it up for those guys to have to play a little bit more defensive, and I think that played against athletes like Lionel Sanders. But Anthony Costas, wow, that was quite an effort. I mean, I think it was 13 seconds with a K to go. That's nuts.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of the tactics being played out with that final kind of 1,500 meters where both Costas and Sanders making a move for home had to use their power-ups. And there you see it, sprint finish at the line. And Costas must have just snuck his wheel past right at the line there on the finish. Oh. So incredibly close race with a KOM finish. That's very non-Zwift like with a 16-minute climb at the end to see it come down to a sprint finish and 0.046 seconds crazy between the two of them.
You could tell he took the inside of the road where the line was a little bit on that side. He was able to get that, but we are going off of that time, and it was definitely Costas. The picture again with kind of the angle of where those athletes came through, but it did seem like we did have Costas get that just that tires width right as they crossed the finish line, but. Great point, Sean. Last thing I expected was to be talking about half a wheel's distance at the finish of this race today.
Yeah, and it's always hard to kind of call the finish from the gameplay right when watching it live. But when you see, it looked like Van der Drijs might have taken it by half a wheel. But when they slow it down and we go back to this slow-mo footage of the finish line, we see that Costas pulled up right in the last second and might have just dipped his wheel across the line ahead. And we go by the official results, which is all timed on the server, and it did come across with Costas on the win today.
That was amazing performance by both those athletes. Again, I'm still printing up those posters of Van der Drijs, and again, we might have to make a most combative jersey that just has his face on it. So we'll go back to great racing today, Sean, by both the men's and women's field. Let's go back and look at that women's race. And, again, you really went out on a limb picking Melanie Moore. She got that win.
Yeah, I mean, incredible racing by Melanie today. Also, shout out to Reznikov for having a power drop and still climbing her way back up to fourth. Natalie Van Heerden, great racing. But that podium, Fenella Landridge, Jackie Herring, and Melanie Moore, really, really great results today. And happy to see my pick, Melanie Moore, take the top spot.
Nice work. What I noticed in that, a great performance by Jackie Herring, getting on the podium after racing that invitational crit yesterday with some huge effort. Stoked to see Van Heerden have that performance. And then I was excited to see Watkinson wake up or stay up till 2 a.m. to race with us today. So great performance by all those women, but definitely very spread out and a much different race than we saw from our men's race. A lot closer than those gaps in the women's field.
Yeah, we saw the women's field kind of whittle down over leg snapper. Anytime I can throw in a leg snapper, you got to do it. So the gaps happened early and often on leg snapper today on the women's side. The men stayed closer together, more packed up, and had a big pack coming into the final climb, and it stayed pretty much a pack all the way up. So definitely a lot different racing between the men and women today.
And again, I almost forgot. Did you pick both today, Sean? We got Anthony Costas for the win. He was your pick for the win, yeah?
I did. I got both. I'm going to pat myself on the back. Luckily, I got both winners today. Unluckily, my tech failed me multiple times, and I took a couple breaks on you there, Matt.
To dry, so to speak, Sean, but that's cool. I'm sure the listeners and the viewers enjoyed listening to me scramble on that. But the athletes that were scrambling to the top to get that under that KOM arch did a great job today. Van der Drijs, one of my new favorites. James Cunningham, one of my favorites. Lionel Sanders just out of the podium. You don't see him out of the podium very often here, but stoked to see this performance. And again, we have to mention Joe Skipper. he kind of animated the race from early on. He made those athletes kind of push going into that climb, and I think that's why Van der Drijs was able to capitalize on some soft legs heading into that final KOM.
Yeah, a really aggressive race by Skipper. Was aggressive early and often. Had that 15-second gap at the base of the climb, and just kind of ran out of steam halfway up. Once guys like Costas and Kunema rolled by him, there's not much of a reaction he could do, and faded pretty hard on the climb, falling out of the top 10.
It was textbook. Me and you were calling it 100%. It wasn't going to be anybody but Van der Drijs for the win, but Costas played it to perfection. Again, great racing on both sides today, men and women, Maureen Moore and Anthony Costas. But most importantly, Sean, you picked both of them, so good job on you.
Yeah, can be lucky once or twice and get them right occasionally. So great racing today. Awesome course. Really fun to see these guys attack Innsbruck, and especially with this hilltop finish.
Awesome stuff from those racers. I will say, I think we've got something special in store, hopefully for next week. So make sure to tune in. But for Sean Jefferson, who's timed out again on me, I'm Matt Lieto. And until next time, ride on.